Los Angeles Lakers. I know it's breaking news, guys, but we didn't have file footage of him coaching his son's 7th grade team to use. Come on, we got to use the podcast. Brew,
wow.
Your reaction to the Los Angeles Lakers with 17 championships, I think 35 finals appearances, arguably the most valuable team in the NBA, inarguably actually, arguably the greatest team in NBA history, deciding JJ Redick should be their next head coach.
Look, I mentioned it yesterday. I think they should have looked at Monty Williams. Now, and I heard, and other people talked about it and were like, well, the timing, if it was a little different. Why? You waited this long. Look, you like to have a coach before the draft. But it is this draft pick for the Lakers, it's not like essential that you had a head coach in place. They tried to hire Monty a few years ago. He said went to Phoenix. I know it didn't work out in Dallas or in
also,
Detroit.
Are we to believe JJ's been scouting the draft? Like a heavy?
Right.
Like
I mean, it's just right.
I don't think that matters.
He's going to give a little input, and that'll be that. Anthony Davis had a great relationship with Monty Williams when he was in New Orleans.
Of course.
And was upset when they fired him, had a great relationship with his family, said he cared more about the players as people than play. Like, really liked Monty. I think that, again, at least interview him. Consider it. See what he would do with the team before you go out and make this hire. Look, JJ, maybe will he be harder? Will he coach LeBron? Because on the podcast, he does push back a little bit. So maybe he'll coach LeBron and do what they need. But it's just a complete, question mark as to how good he's going to be.
I mean, it's a hell of a gamble for the end of LeBron's career. It would be objectively hilarious if LeBron didn't go back to L.A. After all this, launch a podcast with the guy, he goes to L.A., and then LeBron's like, I think someone else might be better off coaching me. So, I mean, it's Hollywood. It's a compelling story.
Well, so it's a compelling, and so much of the Lakers' business is based on compelling
yes.
stories. I'm glad you brought up the LeBron thing because I want to address that. It would be unfair of me to say JJ Redick's not going to be a good NBA head coach, just like it would be unfair of me to say he's going to be a good NBA head coach because he is being hired with as thin, I can say this off the top of my head knowing it's true, as thin of a coaching resume as any coach that's ever taken the job in modern NBA history. Because it couldn't be thinner. It's just to never be a part of an NBA staff, front office, and to coach at the big-time high school, let alone college, G League, NBA, none of that. You couldn't have a thinner coaching resume. So there's nothing to judge it on other than vibes and guess. So I don't know. I am skeptical. My biggest concern with JJ, honestly, is he appears to me to be very, very online and very, very aware of criticism of himself.
Yes.
And I think that can be a real detriment if you're the head coach of a basketball team.
In L.A.?
In L.A.
You can't have rabbit ears.
That's what I mean. Head coach of the Lakers, I should say, more so than anything. The LeBron piece, though, if I may just pivot it there quickly on the fly. Just because you want to do a podcast with a guy is not, to me, evidence you want him to be your head coach. And I'm not saying, again, I give the audience my word. I have not talked to LeBron, anyone in his camp about this. I am simply saying, just logically speaking, there are plenty of people that I adore or would adore working with that if they were like, hey, we need a new showrunner for First Things First. What about Danny? I might be like, hey, love him on the show, love him as a guy, think we could maybe get someone with a little more experience at it. So the reason I'm saying that is this idea that they are doing this to appease LeBron assumes this is what LeBron wants. And the one piece of info we do have definitively is when they were interviewing Dan Hurley, LeBron reached out to Dan to tell him he would have his support and his buy-in if he were there, if he stays.
Hold on, though.
Yeah. And I think he'll stay.
Right. I mean, you're right. It's not a guarantee that LeBron wants the guy that he hosts a podcast with to be his head coach. But it's a pretty safe assumption that LeBron's on board with this, right?
Well, so I think...
Yeah, I'm sure he's on board at the very least. No question.
It'd be a hell of a coincidence.
I don't think he might not like the hire. I can't see any way he doesn't like the hire.
I guess my point is this. You have heard the same thing I have heard, Brew, which is he has not chimed in with the Lakers front office. He is staying out of it. We know he endorsed to the other guy another guy. So if I was really hoping someone was going to get a job and then someone else that I don't have a long-standing relationship with is interviewing for that job, I might not submarine the guy's chances, but I wouldn't call him and give him a vote of confidence if I was super stoked about the other person. Yeah. So again, this is, I'm being totally candid. It's pure speculation. But I just think people are assuming because Bron likes JJ doing the podcast with him that he likes the idea of having to play for him. I don't know if that is or isn't true.
But I think that is a fair assumption or a logical assumption for people to make. And I agree with you. We've talked to people that I don't think LeBron had anything to do with this hire. But it is logical for people to assume that he's the greatest player in the franchise and he's had say in franchises before and he's doing a podcast with the guy. So I don't think people are can blame people for jumping to that conclusion. I will say this, too. Most of the players who have coached without any experience were either kind of removed from the era in which they played. Pat Riley, I know he was like an assistant, but Steve Kerr, who worked with the Suns and ran their front office but hadn't coached.
Mark Jackson.
He was removed. Right. Or the second thing I was going to say, or they were more respected players. And JJ was a solid player. He was respected in that regard. Mark Jackson was not a star.
He's an all-star,
but he was darn
at one point.
Yeah, I think he made one
Yeah,
all-star
that's what
team.
I mean, yeah.
But
Ty
he was
Jason
highly
Kidd.
respected as a top, that tier player. And Ty Lue, though, was an assistant for a while.
Yep.
So I'm saying guys that went straight to head coaching, Larry Bird. Obviously, you respect Larry Bird. Steve Magic,
right. And even though Magic didn't do well.
Nash didn't do well, but he had people's respect. Isaiah Thomas, who had worked for franchises, obviously, but he was a guy, he's a legend. So I think the questions, JJ was just playing 3 years ago.
Right.
And a lot of these guys remember taking him to the hole.
Yeah.
Being able to play better than him. And so I wonder if that could be something he has to overcome as well.
I'm sure we'll have more on this in a bit, but we're going to step aside for a moment. Coming up next, will Caleb Williams, I'm not asking this question, be the worst quarterback in the NFC North?
Wow.
I mean, I don't know. Is the NFC North trading for Mahomes, Allen, and Burrow? Otherwise, probably not.
Smart people, though.
Teams from last year, the Eagles and the Ravens, went out and said, what we need is the most expensive, older running back on the market, and they both got it. How much better does Saquon make Philly?
Don't forget your Cowboys did the same thing.
It wasn't expensive. It wasn't expensive. I think he's damn near the league minimum.
Look, I think this is going to be similar to Christian McCaffrey in San Francisco. And the Niners were good before McCaffrey got there. He took them to another level. I think Saquon can do that. They've been good, and they've gotten good rushing performances, but the Niners the run game was solid. They didn't have that, ultra elite back, but they did have good production from their running backs, just like Philadelphia or Baltimore does that. Look, he can catch the ball out the backfield. We know he can run the football. And look, Philadelphia still is going to have a top offensive line. I know your boy Kelsey left, and he was great. Yeah. But they still have some people are saying they still have the best offensive line in the league. So you go from one of the worst offensive lines with the Giants to one of the best. He has been the focal point of the defense every play he's ever played in the NFL because he hadn't had a quarterback, hadn't had great receivers. And now they got to worry about Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts even running the football. And then he's got so many more advantages that he didn't have with the Giants.
But he's not good with the Giants. But he's not Christian McCaffrey.
I don't know that his numbers are comparable to McCaffrey's when McCaffrey was with Carolina.
Hold on.
All three up. They both had 1,000-yard seasons.
If I may, if I may, just real quick, and I didn't know you were going to say this, but I actually have the comp written down. Saquon Barkley in his career has one season with 800 yards from scrimmage, receiving and running. 1,800, pardon me.
Oh, okay,
I misspoke. One season with 1,800 or more yards from scrimmage his rookie year, and one season with more than 10 touchdowns. Christian McCaffrey has 4 seasons with 1,800-plus yards from scrimmage.
Including with the Niners.
Yes, including with the Niners.
That's a better situation. And who was his quarterback with Carolina?
But he had
Oh, it was Cam for a while.
It was Cam
That's
briefly.
a little better than Danny Jones.
Well, kind of. It was Cam.
Kind of.
No, I'm saying he didn't have. You can't argue that Christian McCaffrey had great quarterback play his whole time in Carolina.
No,
he did at the
Baker
very.
was there for a
right.
little while.
He had Darnold for one of his years. Let me give you a little bit of credit. Here is what.
Just a little credit.
No, I mean, as far as whether or not the Eagles needed it. Here is what the Eagles got from DeAndre Swift last season, if we can show it to you real quick. So, Brew, that's probably not, right?
And it felt like Swift had a good year.
Yeah, well, that's also because I'm being totally unfair. That is not DeAndre Swift last year. That's actually Saquon Barkley last year, guys. And so I just think you might be a touch overrating him. I just think at this point in his career.
What running back was McCaffrey? And now maybe I'm not saying McCaffrey's not maybe a little better, but I think Saquon's in that class.
Okay, I think he was as a rookie.
He had no line, no quarterback
I think he
play,
was as a rookie.
no receivers.
Well, go ahead.
Well, listen, I'm with you that if you watch the Giants game, 8 guys in the box, everyone shadowing Saquon Barkley. He was the only way they had to move the ball. That is 100% true. The question, though, is how much better will Saquon make Philly? Philly was a top 10 rushing team in the NFL last year. And DeAndre Swift, we got the numbers, he had a very good season.
He's good.
He was a Pro Bowler. So if we remove Saquon's rookie year and go to 2 years ago, which was the last good Saquon year.
Yeah, that was his best year other than his rookie year.
Best year. If we have those numbers side by side, Saquon was better than DeAndre Swift, but not in a crazy, not in a crazy way. So, is a healthy Saquon Barkley that isn't the focal point of an offense? And by the way, he should get fewer touches in Philly, which maybe will make him more efficient, but the production won't be that much higher. I'm not sure how much better Philly can be running the ball than they were last year. DeAndre Swift was very good.
So I think Saquon might be able to help him the most in that. I think they should use him on the tush push instead of Jalen.
And that might keep Jalen fresher.
That's what I mean. Not because they could be more effective at it, just to keep Jalen healthier, but we have